So this guy got amnesia and forgot who he was for 14 years. Now the guy's name is Jim, and Jim is 50 years old. He's a mailman living in New York State. Jim is a kind of clumsy. I mean, he's always falling and busting. Like bro really needs instructions on walking. And one day in 1971, it all starts to catch up to him because he's at home and it's a normal day and he goes to take the garbage out and he slips down the icy steps and boom, he hits his head on the pavement. A few days later he's driving to work in OSU. He suddenly starts sneezing like crazy and he somehow loses control of his car and bam, he crashes into a telephone pole and he hits his head again. The next day he goes to work and you know he's trying to be chill at this point. Like okay, I just need to not trip on anything. But then I guess because he had hit his head in the days before, he suddenly gets all dizzy and whoa, he falls down a flight of theirs and bam, he hits his head yet again. And luckily for the next 10 days Jim manages not to get into any accidents, which at this point is like quite an achievement. But then he's out driving and he loses control of his car again and kaboom, he crashes his car again. He hits his head. This time he hits it so hard that it knocks him unconscious and he's rushed to the hospital and he spends 3 days there recovering with a cerebral concussion. And if that isn't bad enough, a few weeks later he has his worst day yet. And this day changes his whole life. So it seems like a normal day and he borrows his friend's station wagon, probably because he just wrecked his other car twice. But he borrows the station wagon because he's gotta drive and pick someone up from the airport. So he takes it out and while he's driving his wallet falls out of his pocket and into the floorboard. A few hours later he returns the car to his friend not realizing his wallet had fallen out and his friend offers him a ride home and Jim's like nah bro I'll walk because it's only like 15 minutes away. Then on his walk home he starts getting this terrible headache and this one's really bad. Like worse than he's ever had. It's so bad he's not sure if he can make it home or not. Now let's pause. First we gotta talk about this woman and is Jim's wife. And is also waiting on Jim to get home from borrowing that friend's station wagon. And so she's sitting there in her house, chilling and she waits. And she waits and she waits but there's no sign of Jim. And around 2 a.m., she's still sitting there waiting and he's still not home. And remember, this walk should have taken 15 minutes at most. And so Anne calls the police and she officially reports him missing within the next day. Everyone is looking for Jim. The police put out an APB looking for him. They start reaching out to his friends and relatives to see if anyone's seen him. They're checking bodies in the local morgue to see if he's one of them, but so far they don't find anything. And poor Anne doesn't know what to do. I mean, her longtime husband just suddenly vanished. I mean, was he kidnapped? Was he gonna live? No one knows. And so several years passed and still no one has heard anything and there are no leads. And poor Anne now spends her time just living alone, hoping her husband will come home one day and she takes odd jobs around town to try and pay the bills. And she works nights and weekends just to keep busy so that she doesn't have to think about Jim and like she doesn't move to a new place or anything. She keeps their phone number listed under his name just in case anyone finds him and decides to call and eventually, sadly, she officially has Jim declared dead, as there is no other explanation for where he might be. Until here's the thing about Jim. We know Jim is a klutz. Like we've seen him bust his skull several times in the same week. So here's what really happened to him on his walk home that night. So Jim is on his way home and he's not feeling well and huge headache and suddenly boom, he completely blacks out. And there's no record of what happens in this next part, but the speculation. After blacking out, he goes and he catches a local train from his town into Grand Central Station in New York City. And from there he potentially catches another train or a bus, and he ends up in Pennsylvania. Specifically in Philadelphia. And during all that he is completely blacked out. Like he just doesn't remember. And so the next memory Jim has, he's suddenly standing in downtown Philadelphia, a city he's never been to before, and he doesn't remember his full name. He doesn't remember where he's from or how he got there or anything. About his past, the only thing he can remember is that his first name is Jim. And to make it worse, he doesn't have his wallet on him because it fell out in his friend's station wagon. So he can't just like look at his license and identify himself. And so I guess he just like doesn't think to go to the police or hospital and it's just like, oh, guess I'll just start a whole new life. And he goes to the local offices of the Social Security Administration and he gets a Social Security card with a new name he gave himself. And normally you'd need like a birth certificate to get a Social Security card. It's the 70s. So that's it. So he gets a card. And he uses that as his ID, and he's able to get a job at a local cafe. And from here, he starts to rebuild his life. He gets several more jobs after that, ending up as a cook at a diner. He joins a nearby church. He makes a whole new circle of friends. Every winter season, he grows out this big white beard. He volunteers as Santa Claus at some of the local orphanages. Bro is just trying to live a normal life, I guess. And 14 years go by since Jim went first missing, and he's 64 years old now, and he's still living this second life over in Philadelphia. And one night, it's Thanksgiving and everything changes for him again because he's over at his friend's house visiting and they're all watching TV and they're like watching some movie and randomly a mailman appears on the TV screen and suddenly, boom, it hits Jim like a brick. He's like, hey, I think I used to be a mailman. Not only that, some fuzzy memories start coming back to him, like memories of him and his parents. It's weird, but like he's still not really sure what's going on now, despite the fact that Jim has this whole new life. I guess some things just never change because at his very core, he is still clumsy and about a month later Jim has another fall and pow he hits his head. Then a day after that Jim's at work and he falls and bam, hits his head yet again. Here's the thing though, him cracking his noggin must have finally knocked something straight. Because the day after that, he wakes up and kaboom, it all hits him at once. All his memories start flooding back to him. His real name is Jim McDonald. He lives in upstate New York. And most importantly, he has a wife named Anne, a wife who hasn't seen him in 14 years. And so immediately he travels from Philadelphia over to New York, and he goes to his old house where he used to live years ago, thinking hopefully, and still lives there. He rings the doorbell and of course, it's opened because she still lives there. She's been waiting for him all these years. And so finally, after 14 years apart, she sees that he's still alive. And I'm sure she's shocked and she's relieved at the same time and regardless, after all that they finally get to be together again and from there they kissed. That's all you need to know and a huge shout out to Oki and subscribe to Aura Farm.